I'm Rabbi David Ben Eliyahu. I'm 60 years old, and what I'm about to share with you took me 4 decades to find, and it's been sitting in front of every one of us since the day we were born. Your name is not an accident. The first letter of your name is not random. It is a financial blueprint, and most people will live and die never knowing it existed. I spent years counseling families who were doing everything right, working hard, saving money, praying, and still struggling. And I kept asking the same question: why? Why does one person thrive and another barely survive when on paper they look identical? I finally found the answer. It wasn't in a bank account. It wasn't in a financial plan. It was in the Hebrew alphabet. Let me tell you what I discovered. I grew up in Brooklyn, in a traditional Jewish household. My father was not a wealthy man, but he was a disciplined one. Every Friday evening before Shabbat, he would sit at the kitchen table and open a small ledger. He wrote down every dollar that came in, every dollar that went out. I was maybe 7 years old the first time I watched him do it. I said, "Abba, why do you do that every week?" He looked at me and said, "David, if you don't know where your money is going, it will go somewhere you never intended." That stayed with me. I carried it into my rabbinical studies. I carried it into my work counseling families. And for 30 years, I taught people about discipline, budgeting, long-term thinking, good principles, solid principles. But something was missing. People would follow the advice and some would transform. Others wouldn't move at all. Same information, completely different results. And I couldn't explain it. Not until about 8 years ago, when I was studying a text I'd read 100 times before. I was in my office late one night, going through the Sefer Yetzirah, the ancient Jewish mystical text about creation, and I came across a passage I had always read too quickly. It said that God created the world using the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet, not metaphorically, literally. Each letter is a force, a frequency, a channel through which energy, including financial energy, flows into the world. And I sat back in my chair and I thought, if each letter carries a distinct energy, and if the first letter of a person's name is the primary channel through which their life force expresses itself, then people are not failing because they lack discipline. They're failing because they're using the wrong strategy for their letter. I stayed up until 3 in the morning that night. I went back through decades of the families I had counseled. I looked at who had succeeded and who had not. And I started to see a pattern so clear, so consistent, that I could not ignore it. Let me tell you about 2 men I worked with. Both came to me within the same year. Both were in their early 50s. Both had the same income, the same debt, the same level of education. The first man was named Aaron. The second was named Nathan. Aaron kept starting new ventures. Every time he'd launch something, there'd be a burst of energy and momentum, and then he'd plateau. He'd get restless, lose interest, and the income would flatten. Nathan, on the other hand, had a savings account with a reasonable amount in it, but it had barely grown in 15 years. He was adding money every month and wondering why it felt like running on a treadmill. I told Aaron, "Your name begins with Aleph. In Hebrew, Aleph is the first letter, the letter of beginnings, of divine breath, of leadership. You were not designed to maintain. You were designed to initiate. Every time you've moved into maintenance mode, your income has died. You need to be starting something new consistently, always launching, always building the next thing. The moment you settle, the code goes dormant. He looked at me like I had just described his entire life. He said, "That's exactly what happens. How did you know?" I told Nathan, "Your name begins with Nun, the letter that means fish in Hebrew. Fish don't grow one at a time. They multiply by the hundreds. You were designed for exponential growth, not linear accumulation. Your savings account is like trying to swim upstream. Your money should be multiplying while you sleep." He had been saving in the wrong vehicle for 15 years because no one had ever told him what his letter was designed to do. I switched Aaron's focus back to launching, a new consulting product he'd been sitting on for 2 years. I moved Nathan's savings into index funds. Within 18 months, Aaron's income had doubled from the new venture. Within 7 years, Nathan's money had grown to more than 2.5 times its original value. Neither of them had changed their effort. They had changed their alignment. That's when I understood. The problem was never laziness. It was never lack of faith. It was misalignment with the letter code embedded in their identity at birth. Now I want to walk you through the most important letters of the Hebrew alphabet, matched to their English equivalents, so you can find your code today. When I reach your letter, pay close attention. This is not general advice. This is your personal blueprint. Aleph corresponds to the letter A. If your name begins with A, you are a pioneer. You are a beginner. Your wealth flows through starting, not through maintaining. God designed you to initiate businesses, ideas, movements, ministries. The moment you settle into routine, your financial energy stagnates. Your strategy is simple. Start something new every single year. Launch, build, hand off, then launch again. Abraham began with Aleph. He left everything familiar and became extremely wealthy, but only because he kept moving. When he settled, complications came. When he moved forward, provision appeared. Bet corresponds to B. The letter Bet literally means house in Hebrew. If your name begins with B, your wealth is tied to physical structures, real estate, property, creating spaces where others feel safe and stable. This does not require you to be a contractor. It means your financial energy flows through land, buildings, and tangible assets, not abstract markets. Your strategy: get into property, even small. Buy, renovate, rent. Your wealth is physical. Boaz in Scripture was a landowner. His fields were his fortune. Dalet corresponds to D. The letter Dalet means door. If your name begins with D, you are a connector, a bridge. Your wealth comes not from working alone, but from connecting others, to opportunities, to each other, to resources. You are a broker by design. Your strategy: build a network deliberately, make introductions, become known as the person who knows people. Charge for your connections. Your wealth is relational. David, whose name begins with Dalet, rose from shepherd to king through strategic relationships with Jonathan, with Samuel, with the mighty men who became his army. Gimel corresponds to G. The letter Gimel in ancient pictographic Hebrew shows a rich man running toward a poor man, someone moving in urgency to give. If your name begins with G, you are a giver. But here is what most G people don't understand. The giving must be strategic, not emotional. Random generosity disperses your energy. Intentional generosity, tithing, sponsoring, investing in people and causes aligned with your purpose, creates a return loop that becomes self-sustaining. The moment a G person stops giving deliberately, the flow stops. George came to me at 70 years old. He had been tight with money his entire life and couldn't understand why he had so little. I told him about the Gimel code. He began tithing for the first time. Within 3 months, he received an inheritance from a relative he barely knew, $47,000. He told me, "Rabbi, I gave 800, and this came back." I said, "George, the code was always there. You just activated it." Mem corresponds to M. Mem means water in Hebrew. Water does not sit still. It flows, always moving, always finding the path of least resistance to something lower and wider. If your name begins with M, you will never thrive in static environments. Your wealth comes through movement, distribution, logistics, delivery, transportation, anything that moves things from one place to another. In the digital world, this includes products and information that flow through the internet. Moses, whose name begins with Mem, literally means drawn from water. He led millions of people through the sea. He was never in one place for long, and the provision followed the movement. Nun corresponds to N. Nun means fish. As I described with Nathan, if your name begins with N, you are a multiplier, not an adder. Compound growth, passive investment, anything that multiplies while you're not watching it. A savings account will kill your financial design. You need your money in vehicles that grow exponentially. Stocks, index funds, real estate investment trusts, tools of multiplication, not preservation. Resh corresponds to R. Resh means head in Hebrew. If your name begins with R, you are designed to lead, to be at the top of whatever structure you're in. Working under someone else's authority for an extended period of time caps your income at someone else's ceiling. You are not built to be the tail. You are built to be the head. Your strategy, rise. Whatever field you're in, move toward the leadership position. If the structure won't allow it, build your own. Ruth, whose name begins with Resh, went from poverty to becoming the wife of the wealthiest man in the region, not by staying in servitude, but by positioning herself strategically to lead a household. Samek corresponds to S, and this one surprises people, because we live in a culture that glorifies the entrepreneur. But the letter Samek means to support, to uphold, to hold something steady from underneath. If your name begins with S, your wealth is not in leading your own venture. It is in making successful people more successful. Executive assistant, chief of staff, operations director. When you attach yourself to a rising leader and become indispensable, your income grows with theirs, and it will grow faster than any solo venture you try to build alone. Sarah came to me exhausted. She had started 3 businesses in 5 years and failed at all of them. I told her, "You are not a Resh, you are a Samek. Stop leading, start supporting." She became an executive assistant to a prominent CEO. Within 3 years, she was earning $140,000 a year. She told me it was the first time in her life that work felt natural. Shin corresponds to SH or S sounds. Shin represents fire in Hebrew. Fire transforms. It does not add. It does not maintain. It changes the nature of things entirely. If your name begins with these sounds, your wealth comes through transformation, coaching, renovation, rehabilitation, consulting. You take broken things, broken businesses, broken properties, broken people, and you make them valuable. Your profit is always in the gap between what something was and what it becomes after you've touched it. Tav corresponds to T. Tav means mark, a signature, a seal, the final letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It is the letter of completion. If your name begins with T, you are a finisher. You close deals. You complete projects. You bring things across the finish line that others began and abandoned. In any economy, the person who finishes is paid extremely well, because most people don't. Your strategy. Partner with visionaries who generate ideas but can't execute them. You complete their vision. You take a percentage. You both win. Yod corresponds to Y or J. Yod means hand. The letter is the smallest in the Hebrew alphabet, a single stroke, and yet it is the hand of God, the instrument of creation. If your name begins with Y or J, your wealth is in what your hands make. Products, craftsmanship, art, handmade goods, baked goods, built things. Whatever your hands produce carries value. Joseph, whose name begins with Yod, used his hands and his mind to manage the resources of an entire nation. He made things. He built systems. He created structures. And it made him second in command to Pharaoh. Now let me tell you what to do with this. Step 1. Find your letter. Go back through what I've just shared and locate the code for the first letter of your name. Step 2. Write down your prosperity strategy, not in your head, on paper, or on your phone, something you can see. This is your roadmap. Step 3. Within 7 days, take one action that aligns with your code, just one. If you're an A, start something, anything. If you're a B, look at one property listing. If you're a D, make one intentional introduction. Action is what activates the code. Knowledge without action is just information. Step 4. Stop fighting your design. If you are an S who has been trying to build a solo business for years and it keeps failing, stop. If you are an R trapped under someone else's ceiling, start planning your exit. The suffering is not happening because you are weak. It is happening because you are misaligned. Step 5. Make a public commitment. Leave a comment below. Type your letter and write the words, "My code is activated." This is not superstition. It is declaration. And declaration creates accountability. I want to close with something personal. My name begins with Dalet. I am a connector. And for 60 years, through my rabbinical work, through counseling, through this channel, my entire life has been about connecting people. Connecting ancient wisdom to modern problems. Connecting struggling families to the principles that could free them. Every breakthrough I have witnessed in someone else's financial life came through a connection I was able to make. Not through a product I built alone. Not through a property I owned. Through a door I opened. I didn't always know that. For years I counseled people on discipline and savings, and I watched some of them thrive and some of them not move at all. And I blamed myself. I thought I was teaching wrong. But the teaching wasn't wrong. The alignment was missing. And when I finally understood my own letter, my own door, everything in my work became more intentional, more focused, more effective. Your name is not an accident. Your letter is not random. Before you were born, before your parents chose your name, this code already existed, and it has been waiting for you to find it. So, type your letter in the comments right now. Tell me, what is the first letter of your name, and what is one action you are going to take this week that aligns with your code? I read every comment. I respond when I can. And sometimes the most important thing is simply writing it down and saying it out loud. If this teaching meant something to you, if something shifted while you were watching, please subscribe and turn on notifications. I post every week, and this kind of teaching takes time to prepare. I don't want you to miss what's coming. Hit the like button. It helps this channel reach people who need it. And share this video with someone in your life who has been working hard and still struggling. They may not know why, but now you do. There's also a link in the description, a short form where you can submit your own story. If you've experienced a financial breakthrough through faith-based principles, or if you're still in the middle of the struggle and want guidance, fill it out. I read those submissions personally. Wealth is built in silence, lost in emotion. Your letter is your silence, the quiet, structural truth of who you were made to be. Stop chasing someone else's strategy. Find your code, align with it, and then trust the process. Shalom.